Hello and welcome to episode 20 of the Wonder of Stuff podcast, broadcast live on Google Hangouts on air every weekend, again on a Sunday this week. It's the place, as always, where you'll find news, information and commentary on science, engineering and technology from the past week and beyond, and anything else that interests us from inside our tiny little human brains. My name, as ever, is John Gardner, and to help me out this week on the road to knowledge, let me introduce my colleagues, as ever. Richard Smith and Ross Davidson. Say hello, chaps.
Hello, chaps.
Hello, chaps.
Yes, we were going to have a guest presenter on this week, but unfortunately he is ill, so he isn't turning in. So it's just us three ugly mugs again this week. And without further ado, we'll get started on this week's three topics. And we'll go with Ross first, and he's going to talk about SpaceX.
Yes, SpaceX. So basically some history of SpaceX. Company's called Space Exploration Technologies Corporation, or SpaceX for short. So basically this is an American company which was actually founded by Elon Musk, who you may have heard of from Tesla Motors and PayPal. It was founded in 2002, and basically they're looking at reducing the cost of space transportation and looking further ahead to go to Mars and that sort of thing. And basically what they've done is they've developed some rockets called the Falcon rockets and a spacecraft called Dragon. And Dragon is what carries cargo, and they're looking to carry people as well. So basically, so far, it's a private company, and they were the first privately funded company to reach orbit, which is in 2008. The first private funded company to successfully launch and recover a spacecraft, which is in 2010, and the first private company to send a spacecraft to the International Space Station, which is in 2012. Now they're going to launch another rocket tomorrow, about 4:33 Eastern EDT, whatever that is, which I think is about 8:30 GMT tomorrow night. And basically this is sending some payload to the International Space Station, but also they're going to try and land the rocket. So the first stage rocket, the idea is that it's reusable. And Elon Musk, actually, when he started this company, was saying that if the vehicle isn't reusable, you consider it all a failure. And I mean, basically, what they were doing, I think it was 2009, they abandoned the idea of the traditional with the parachutes and landing in the water, because basically the re-entry was too difficult and the water damaged the rocket, so they couldn't use it again. In 2011, they decided they were going to have a different approach, which is basically a powered descent. So what happens when the first stage separates from the rocket? It actually turns itself around, boosts again, comes back down, and actually lands powered by its rocket. So they've had two attempts at this so far. January this year they tried it, but unfortunately it got to they're currently landing on a barge. Basically, they haven't got the permission to try and land anywhere near humans or buildings or anything like that. So they've just got a floating barge, and they tried it in January 2015, and it got to the barge, and just at the last minute, it came down at about a 45-degree angle, hit the barge, and spectacular explosion.
It went bang, didn't it?
It did go bang, yeah. They tried again in February 2015, but unfortunately the weather was too stormy, so they had to abandon that, and they had a soft landing in the water. So it basically came down and then went out. So tomorrow, it's going to be their third attempt. Is that John?
Was it not? Did it not have a hydraulic problem? A fuel?
No, that was in January. That was the one where they actually got to the barge,
right?
And then it crashed at the last minute. Yeah, in February they did it, but they just couldn't. The sea swell was too much. So basically, they said, yeah, on that one they said it was successful and splashed down nicely vertical, within an accuracy of 10 meters, which is quite good, really. So yeah, they're doing this tomorrow, and it's quite an amazing thing to see these rockets actually coming back down and landing themselves. They've got little control sort of bursts that come out to maneuver them, and there's been plenty sort of simple sort of test launches of them just going up, then coming back down again. But the Falcon 9 rocket, which is what this one is tomorrow, it's 14 stories tall, so it's not a small rocket. And the plan is that they've got something called the Falcon Heavy that they're working on, which is basically it's got 3 stages that are going to land. So it's sort of what you would, if you remember the space shuttle, how it had the 2 rockets on the side, they would come off. So that would happen first. They would come down and land. The sort of second stage would go further, and then that would come out, and that would turn around, come back and land. And then the final stage would boost the actual payload into orbit. But I think I was reading this. If they're successful with this, I think it's going to be only the 3rd reusable rocket. So obviously the shuttle had reusable parts, the actual bit, the shuttle itself. The rockets weren't reusable, but the shuttle was. And there was a Russian one as well, which I forgot to read up on. But it's a private company doing this. So obviously the idea with reusing it is that it's going to be much cheaper to get the rocket bit, refuel it, and send it up than building an entirely new rocket.
So the only part that's not reusable is the solid rocket booster. Then the rest is.
Well, it's a liquid fueled rocket. The first stage, the solid fuel I think is just the very last stage that puts the payload on its sort of last.
That's the bit that we're used to seeing as the orange bit, basically from the
on the space shuttle. Yeah. But it's like I say, it's an amazing thing, and if you get a chance to watch any of the videos of I mean, they've got, like I say, demonstration videos of the sort of powered descent. It's amazing how sort of controlled. I mean, obviously it's all going to be computer controlled, but it's like sort of it reminds me of when you first saw segways, those self-balancing trike things. It's weird and odd and freaky as it balances itself. The rocket's effectively doing that itself on its rocket boost. It's actually balancing on top of that and coming down with a nice slow landing. Then some legs come out and it just goes doop. And then they can refuel.
So I mean, the company was founded in 2002. How long have they actually been actively doing the actual research and development of this?
Well, it was founded in 2002. Their first launch to reach orbit was 2008. So it took them 6 years to get there. And then it took them another 4 years to actually get to the space station.
And the plan is to travel to Mars, or is there any goals other than?
The plan is to basically take humans up to the space station. Would be the next step.
Right. Okay.
So obviously at the moment it's just the Russian launches that can get people up to the space station.
Because obviously the thing with a private sector organisation is that in parallel to all of the R&D they're doing, they have to get something that they can generate income from. So I know they've got some, or they certainly had some shares in Surrey Satellite Technology in the UK at some point. Mm-hmm. So they're obviously trying to get other revenue streams to come in and keep the R&D going. Because unlike when NASA was doing it, although NASA basically just had a load of cash, and they didn't have to worry about having to generate some constant income. It was just like, here's just more cash.
Yeah. Well, apparently in January they got $1 billion of funding from Google and someone called Fidelity Investments as well, in exchange for 8% of the company. So it's valued quite high, the company. And they had $4 billion in contract revenue in 2012. So for 40 launches, apparently, got $4 billion for that. So I mean, obviously, the cost of putting things up to the space station, if they can reuse a rocket, it's going to be vastly cheaper, but it's still going to bring in a lot of revenue. I don't know how much a launch actually costs. I should have looked at that. But it's going to be vastly cheaper than launches in the past.
Well, I mean that's it. They can't sustain the amount of money that it took for to develop something like the Saturn V rocket, because that was, there was vast amounts. So they're going to have to get something that's cheap, reusable, all the things that they said that the space shuttle was going to be, but they're going to have to do that times 10 or times 100. It's going to have to be really genuinely reusable.
Yeah, apparently Elon Musk says he believes $500 per pound of payload is what they're aiming for.
How does that compare with some of the other missions?
That's what I'm just trying to work out. Apparently it's reducing the cost by a factor of 10.
Decent.
Yeah.
And they've got actually they've got a fair amount of staff now, because I think I was talking to Ross earlier on today, and I said, well, obviously NASA had a lot more people to sort out any of the niggles and problems, but they've got 3,800 people, and staff and contractors as well, I guess.
Since they first started, obviously what they've done so far, what they've achieved so far, has shown that it is a perfectly viable business. And I think obviously once they got over that initial hurdle of getting something into orbit, that would have been when they would have expanded exponentially, I would have thought. And then obviously getting something to the space station, then people who actually want experiments or supplies or anything up there, suddenly thinking, ooh, here's something that could be a tenth the cost. They're bound to go for that.
And all the contracts that they've got, presumably, is that just with NASA, or is it with the Russian Space Agency as well, and indeed other countries?
Well, I know the one tomorrow is a NASA mission. I assume private company, they'll pretty much take anyone's money, I would have thought. Within
presumably
reason. Part
of it is launching satellites. Part of their business model to get finances is satellite launches and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So NASA and who else? Commercial crew is the next step. Yeah. I mean, NASA seems to be the ones that have all the contracts with them that I mentioned here. Yeah.
Oh, well,
but obviously, NASA don't have their own way of getting the space station at the moment, do they?
No, that's true. Yeah, they have to rely on Russia or the Soyuz, don't they? Or actually, the last thing that they launched was on the 1st of March, and that was it was a satellite launch for Eutelsat. So that's one of the broadcast satellites.
Mm-hmm.
That came from Cape Canaveral, their own launch complex on Cape Canaveral.
Yeah.
So yeah, interesting, very interesting. Actually, well, that does kind of lead on to what I was going to say quite well, actually, because from space now to space in the past. This is a story that we were asked to do by Rob, one of our viewers from last week, as the last show concluded. He posted something on our Google Plus feed and said, "Can you do something about the Apollo missions and whether they are fact or fiction?" Now, I'm only doing this because somebody has asked us to do this. Normally, I wouldn't give this time of day, but I'm going to go and do it. And to be honest, I had learned something just by researching it this week, and I had learned something. And I realized there are a lot more conspiracy theorists about a lot more conspiracies than I ever thought possible in this situation. So what I'm going to do is I've got some little various slides and stuff. What I was going to do was simply go the Apollo missions. For anybody who doesn't know, there was 20 planned Apollo missions between the 60s and the 70s, and some failed, some were cancelled. Some were unmanned test missions. So we're concentrating on the ones that put these 12 people on the moon, and that was Apollo 11, 12. We all know what happened to 13, 14, 15, 16, and 17. There was a film made of it, funny enough. And I was just going to go and click on here and then share this out and go, this is this was the first. Right. So my little slide was, it was basically we had to get people from the green and blue thing in the bottom right-hand corner to the great pot-written thing.
It's an original drawing of yours, is it?
Of course, it's an original drawing of mine.
It's actually quite decent, that.
Do you like the 1950s rocket?
It looks, to be honest, it looks genuinely what you see in like kids' books.
That's my other work is with a kids illustrator. So anyway, so we got to get people from the this is the plan was to get people from the blue and green thing in the bottom right hand corner to the grey pox-ridden thing up in the top left hand corner. And I thought that I was just going to show the slide. And we use one of these rockety things, which is the one thing with lots of fire coming out of the bottom, and we get from here to up here. But no, there's conspiracy theories even about that. Majority conspiracy theorists say that we can't actually get people off this planet, so we're kind of buggered straight away. So
what's the reason behind that?
Oh! I can tell you. Actually, I have it here. Hang on. Let me just make this smaller and move this up here. I've got human space travel is impossible. I'll just flick back from here. So when I'm reciting this load of garbage, you can see my face. Right. So human space travel is impossible. Well, where do you want to start?
Radiation belts, I bet that's mentioned.
Yes, yeah, Van Allen belt is one of them.
That's the one, yeah.
Reaching escape velocity is impossible. Yeah,
well, it's not.
Just loads of stuff. I mean, this guy here, he's called...
People also deny that we've got commercial satellites in orbit around the planet then, clearly.
Well, they insist that the International Space Station, while it exists, they will actually say that because obviously we can't see that from Earth, so they can't say that it doesn't exist. What they're saying is it's just a shell. It's just a shell.
What about sat-nav? How do they've got an alternative explanation for how sat-nav works and satellite television and things like that, have they?
Well, actually, I'll go back. What I'm going to do is I'm going back to here because I wanted to. What I was going to play was this. Now you've probably seen this before, and this is the. Let's have a look. Yeah, this is the. Yeah. Okay, so this is something that the space station, the International Space Station, took, and you'll probably be aware of this. This is a compilation of all of the images from the ISS down on Earth. And I was going to say, well, even on this, right? They're saying that this is all CGI. This.
Really?
Okay.
Did you just on a side note? Did you see the footage that NASA released just recently of the spacewalk? I was just watching it before the start. So one of the astronauts doing the spacewalk on the space station had a GoPro attached to him just recently. So there's about an hour of footage just from a GoPro. It's amazing. It's quite unsettling as well. You sort of get that proper vertigo feeling when he points it down. You see the Earth going past. But that was obviously faked as well.
Yeah. Well, obviously. But even when I was showing on that image there that I was just showing you, where it's from the ISS and you see the whole of Earth underneath, there's even a comment there. Well, where are all the thousands of satellites that everybody says they're up there? And it's like, well, okay, do we have to tell you about different orbits? But evidently we did have to tell, and somebody did manage to fill them in on the fact that they're all at different heights.
The conspiracy theories that attack the science surely are the weakest ones, because to me, like, at least in terms of credibility, at least if you're saying, oh well, it's a space race, so there's political gains to be made, and I think people can kind of maybe buy that a little bit. But the thing with attacking the science is that can be categorically, saying, oh, it's not even possible to leave Earth can be categorically proven, whereas did we leave Earth is kind of a different I mean, both are ridiculous, but
Yeah. Well,
at
I
least
mean,
with one, it's a weaker claim, isn't it?
I think some of them know a little bit of maths, so they'll prove it, but they'll leave out fundamental constants and fundamental bits of maths that actually prove the different bits. So they'll just put in equation going down and go, well, this is this, and this is why we can't go. I was like, yeah, but there's loads more that you have to use to get the, Anyway, so I'm going to carry on, and I'm just going to go back to the image, and I'm going to just say, well, okay, say that this bit worked. Okay, we managed to get up to the moon, and then we landed. Okay.
That's going to crash into the moon. That one.
No.
It's firing its rockets into the moon. It's going to crash.
Okay, oh, right. Okay, don't stop. Don't stop. Okay, so we land. So,
how's the fire there as well? I'm actually starting to believe the conspiracy theory. There's definitely no fire on the moon.
Yeah, and there's loads of flies flying around. What's going on?
Can I carry on?
Go on.
Carry on.
Right. Okay. So we'll just go. I'm going to go through some of them, some of the conspiracy theories. There's loads of them. It would take hours to get through them all, but some of them more obvious ones. So we've landed. Okay. We'll take this as a landing. We're on the moon. Yeah. This is right. So this is one of the first pictures and one of the first conspiracy theories about this. So as you can see on here, in the far we've got a little astronaut. That's either Neil or Buzz, standing over there, and then we've got the lunar module, which has landed over here. And in the foreground, we have rocks. And as you can see, there is some shadow from the lunar module and some shadow from the rocks. But shock horror, they're not in the same direction.
Oh, I remember this one from that Channel 5 documentary about 15 years ago.
I love this one. It's brilliant.
It is, right. As you can see, the lunar module is on some flat ground, okay? And it would necessarily be on flat ground because you can't land on rocks. And that's why the shadow comes out here. But what you don't get in the front is that these rocks are they're on uneven ground, completely uneven. And because of the topology of the lunar surface, yeah, that's entirely possible that because they're basically saying is you will have to have more than one source of light to get shadows like that. Just rubbish. You can have one source of light and get that shadow.
Therefore, it was filmed in the studio, and it was an oversight not to get rid of the second source of light. Basically, that's what they're saying.
Yeah.
The other thing is, if you had two sources of light, wouldn't you have two shadows?
Well, you would. But all of these ones that I'm doing today, Mythbusters have proved them, or disproved them.
I guess they're saying one source over where the astronaut is, Ross, and one source closer to the. So they're the thing is, if you, as if you would overlook that, if you were going to create a false photograph, as if you would overlook something like that. Do you know what I mean? As if you'd oh shit, we've got that wrong. Well, just send to print anyway. You know what I mean?
So that can be answered, and it was the episode. All of these ones I'm doing today, episode 104 of Mythbusters. It's on YouTube. Just watch it because they debunk every conspiracy theory, and they actually have A, the time, and B, the money to put together a rig that was identical. In fact, the rig that they use even used the Hasselblad cameras, because for those of you who don't know, all of the astronauts had these fixed Hasselblad cameras which were on the front of them. Now they couldn't really do any fiddling on with the focus and everything, so they were all fixed to a specific optical length. So what you'll also get is, and I'll show you this later on, is people are saying, but they're too good. They're too good, and you would have all sorts of blurred images.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have all of them. And said, well, yeah, but obviously they're only going to show you, if you were Boots the Chemist in the olden days, you'd only show the people from, the good photos of the holiday. You wouldn't show the ones that you can't see anything on. So
are the rest of the photographs in public domain then? Presumably you can't see all the crap ones if you want.
I'm going to show you some of them.
Yeah, I've downloaded the entire set from 2 of the missions. and there's a lot of very bad photos.
Yeah. So this is the font. So that can be answered by just the topology of the moon, the fact that there's hills and all sorts of things. You can have one source of light and get shadows like that. The next one is the famous one of, again, I think this is Neil Armstrong.
I mean, to be fair, that is a bloody good photograph, isn't it?
It is a bloody good photograph, yes.
The thing is, there's no atmosphere there, so you don't get any of this. You know, everything's going to look, if it's in focus, it's going to look amazingly sharp.
Yeah.
Which is why some of the photos have a sort of an unreal sort of quality to them. Because there's no haze anywhere. You know, you don't get a drop off in the distance and stuff like that.
So the conspiracy theory about this one is that because of the shadow and because of where the astronaut is in relation to the light source, he should also be in shadow. But again, this was MythBusters did the same thing. They did the same thing, and they used a moon surface which was very similar in makeup in terms of light reflection, and they found out that yeah, you can, even when the light source is behind the lunar module as it is, the person will still be in. You'll be able to see that much light because of the reflections. The reflectance.
Reflects off the moon surface itself, doesn't it? Yeah.
So that's that one. This one is the boot, and they're saying that if you're in a vacuum, like you're on space, and there's no moisture, you wouldn't get a footprint like that clear and sharp. Again, they did this in MythBusters. They had a vacuum. They actually went to NASA and said, "Can we disprove some of the theories?" And NASA gave them a full vacuum chamber.
Ooh, imagine if they'd said no.
Yeah,
that would have been a conspiracy.
They set up exactly the same thing. They actually had a shoe, a boot, a moon boot. They put it on an apparatus which is obviously all sealed, the complete vacuum, and they were able to push this boot down onto the surface, and it made a complete print like that, even with no moisture in the air. So that's that one. I'm going through these because, quite frankly, you know, from my point of view, there isn't really much to say about them. But obviously, I don't want to belittle people who have different thoughts about it. But the next one is when the lunar module landed, one of the things that they did was plant a flag in the moon's surface. Now, bearing in mind, again, like we learned from the last photograph, is that space is a vacuum. So what they didn't expect to see, or what everybody thinks they saw, was when they planted the flag in the surface, that the flag waved like a breeze. And that was like, well, there you go. Somebody opened a door in the soundstage and they got a draft. But effectively, what it was is essentially when you put something in the ground and you twist it to push it down, you get a movement. And you get a movement on the whole thing, including the flag. Now, because there's no air resistance, the flag will wave. It'll wave, obviously, if you're doing it on Earth as well. But you'll get much more of a wave because there's no air resistance. So the flag will, by the twisting of this pole, so this pole here, when you're trying to push it in the ground, this bit will move. Simple as that. Doesn't need a breeze. It's just moving because of momentum. And chaps, got anything to say about that?
I was actually just going to say an interesting thing about that flag, in that if there's footage looking back when the blast off from the moon, and the blast from the taking off blows the flag off, so they stuck it in there and then blew it down when they took off.
Yeah, because what they obviously they put a television camera away from the lunar module, which was filming everything.
Yeah.
And the first conspiracy theorists were saying, but there's somebody else on the moon filming all this.
Actually,
no, that tripod.
That bit of footage is one of those bits of footage that you do look at and think, there's something odd about that in terms of how well it's framed. but obviously they had it timed to sort of, when it blasted off, the camera went up like that and followed it.
Yeah.
But you can sort of see why, if you discount sort of the fact that they're scientists and they can time stuff, it does look really weird.
Yeah.
And I think also just the effect of the sort of the blast and stuff going off when you don't have that atmosphere to see, you don't get billows of stuff, you just get stuff going off with no resistance. That gives it a sort of a very artificial look to the footage.
Right. So this was the last conspiracy theory that I was going to cover, and then I was going to go and I just thought, well, okay, so I'll prove. What have we got to prove? What can I do from sitting in this room with what I have available on the internet to prove? Because I can't go back to first principles, and I can't do the maths for it all. So the first thing is that on a number of the I'll just flip back to here. Hang on, so see my ugly face. So the various Apollo missions, what the other things, apart from video cameras and flags that they left on the moon, they also left a retroreflector, which is a little. I'll flip back because I do have this one. Let me have a look. There you go. One of these was left on, I think, 3 missions, the last one being Apollo 15. And these were reflectors that they put on the moon so that when the Earth fired a couple of gigawatt laser at those reflectors, it would bounce back. The idea being that they could calculate the distance between Earth and the moon and see if the moon was moving away, as it is. It's moving away about 3.8 centimeters every year from Earth, or not. And the quite simple test for this is that the Apache Point Observatory in New Mexico, a few times a year, points a laser at one of these reflectors and gets a value back. Then they point the laser somewhere else on the moon's surface where they know that the retroreflector isn't there, and they get nothing back. And the only way they get something back is because some human put a big reflector on the moon. There's no other way that you could get a reading back if it wasn't reflecting the laser back. Again,
of course the conspiracy theorists will say, well, it's the Americans doing the test, and which is why you sort of, the evidence that the Russians during the whole thing didn't call foul. The Chinese haven't called foul since. You know what I mean?
But there are also other countries have put through autonomous landers have also put retroreflectors on the moon. There's not just the Americans there now. There are
Did the Chinese go over the site as well? I know that was scheduled, and I can't remember if it ever happened. But
I'm gonna cover that. So this is the first thing. This is actually happening, and I'll just flick to the actual. Where is it? There you go. This is the Apache Point. Yeah, that is an actual photograph of the green 2 gigawatt laser hitting the moon's surface and bouncing back, and that is hitting the retroreflector that Apollo 15 left on the moon.
That looks like the moon's angry with us and it's trying to blow us up.
It was filmed when there was a lunar eclipse.
Excellent.
So you got that the coloring from that. So it's definitely there. All these things are there. The last one I want to do is exactly what Richard has just said, and the going back to the landings that the actual the places where all of the Apollo landers actually landed. So up until the point where it's sort of like the mid 21st century, you still have the conspiracy theorists saying, well, we haven't got any proof. We still haven't got any proof. We haven't got any photos, even though the retroreflector wasn't good enough for them. We haven't got any photos of the landing site. So up till about the mid 21st century, that was true. We didn't have anything.
There was lots of people saying, why can't we just point Hubble at the moon and get a photo of?
Yeah. Well, we managed to get pictures from the moon, starting in about 2000. I think it was 2005. There was an Indian reconnaissance project. It's the first picture of one of the Apollo sites. I think it was Apollo 17. And then the Japanese and the Chinese probes have both got subsequent pictures of various Apollo sites. But the best one... Oh, Ross has just emailed me to say he's crashed.
I noticed that he had. I think it's probably a conspiracy. I think he was about to speak out on behalf of it wasn't real, and he's been silenced by the US government.
He has. That's evidently what's happened. Well, we may never see him again.
He's rebooting, so he'll come back.
So anyway, I'll carry on because this is worth it, and obviously we've got a time schedule, so I can't wait around for Ross. So I'll go back to the sharing the screen, and this is the Apollo 15 lander, the Lunar Reconnaissance orbiter, which NASA put in space. Started taking photographs of the whole of the moon again, and in 2009 we got the first ones, but these ones are from 2011. So what you can see there is the LRRR, which is the retroreflector, which I showed before. That's the first one. You've got the camera, the video camera, the lunar module. They're all there. Probably the later ones are better. So Apollo 12 is here, and that's, again, you've got various other equipment, but Apollo 12. You've got the lunar module, the flag, the Surveyor 3 spacecraft, which was one of the reconnaissance crafts that went up in the 60s before Apollo. It was unmanned, and this was in the same place as where Apollo 12 landed.
Yeah.
So that's there, and probably the best one is Apollo 15, because you can see on Apollo 15 all the tracks of the lunar rover.
Yeah.
And you can actually see the lunar rover over here, where the little LRV is. That is where they left the lunar rover. So it's all there.
Yeah.
We have proof of it.
And so these have been observed by other nations as well as the Americans,
yeah.
haven't they?
Indians, Japanese, and Chinese have all said, "Yep, we can concur that they were all there." What I was also going to say is, Ross is back.
Hello, sorry, brief blue screen of death there.
Richard says it's a conspiracy. You were about to blow the lid on the what I was going to say, when we were talking before about there not being any blurred photos, well, there are loads of blurred photos. There's one, for instance. That is the shadow of a lunar module, and that's either a flag or the. They did a couple of experiments about lunar winds and stuff, but it's completely out of focus, and it's.
That looks like some sort of alien tentacle to the top left.
Yes.
Yeah.
Perhaps. What, this here?
No, left. Go left.
Oh, this here?
Yeah, there.
I think it's probably an antenna. but so I mean, how far do you go?
You can never go far enough because the thing with conspiracy theories are that it's a form of cognitive bias, isn't it? There's books being written on this because it's an interesting area for psychologists because it's semi-unique in a lot of senses. But the thing is, if people start with the idea that it didn't happen, and then through confirmation bias they find so-called evidence that matches what they already have pre-decided and discard evidence, which is why it's essential to do the science on these things, because that's how you find out what's true. Is you look at the evidence in its entirety, and then the evidence dictates what's true. If you say, okay, I don't like the USA, or I don't like this administration, or I don't like whatever, it's not true, and then I'm going to selectively look for evidence that supports that view. You will find it. You'll find that, for almost anything you'll be able to do that. But other people will think you're crazy.
Yeah, I mean, what I'll do is, as part of the show notes, I'll show you where I got all of these source materials from. The best thing is the Apollo Image Gallery, which is ApolloArchive.com, which has all of the Hasselblad camera rolls of film completely scanned in. So everything from all of the missions are all there, and you'll see lots of rubbish photographs, some really good photographs, everything in between. Basically, there'll be the ones in black and white. There's some of them are in color. There's
I think one of my favorite photos is, I can't remember who the astronaut was, but one of them left a photo of, was it his wife and child or something, on the surface of the moon, and there's a photograph of that. And I like that because you just think that photograph's sitting there for forever, or unless we go back to that particular place and pick it up again. But
no, I've never seen that one. I mean, I did spend most of Saturday going through these, and some of them are just like brilliant. I mean, there's the photograph that everybody knows, which is the Earthrise photograph, which is the Earth just peeking over the surface of the moon. Well, until you see them, it's a good photograph, but it's out of context, because what you actually see here, it's actually a time lapse. So you see the surface of the moon, and with no Earth, and then like Earth comes up, and it actually appears to just rise and rise and rise. So that's why they called it Earthrise. Just looking at the one photograph out of context, it's a great photograph, but it's actually a time lapse of the whole of Earth just rising up. And you'll find all those things if you've got a few hours to kill, and also what you'll also get is that there's also a complete archive of all of the audio from all of the transmissions there and back and on the surface of the moon for all of the Apollo missions, and they're all there as well.
One of the other conspiracies I remember reading about the photographs comes back to what I was saying about the fact, there's no atmosphere there, so everything's in focus. In the distance, it doesn't get, there's no haze or anything like that. And one of the bits of evidence that it was all done on a studio thing was that they've got photos that were taken like quite a distance apart, and the same backgrounds in the photo. But basically, in the background, what looks like just a mound is actually like a mile away or something like that. And because it doesn't look like it's far away, it just looks like it's close.
Yeah, I've seen that before. What they were postulating was that you could see lots of powdery surface, and then there was a line where they've just put in a backdrop. That's what they're saying, but basically it's just like you say, it's so far away.
Really far away.
Yeah, and the they were one of the best cameras of the day, and
also there's no stars in the photos.
Yes.
They are.
Well,
but of course that's all down to contrast and exposure, isn't it?
Yeah, it's fixed.
If you could see the stars, everything else would be overblown. It would just be white because
I mean,
anyone who knows how to use a camera will do
that. What they'd also, and if you look at some of these, even if you look at the comments on the photographs on this archive, you'll see things like, I think it was Apollo 8. Apollo 8 was the first one that actually did a full lunar orbit and came back. So it was a manned lunar orbit. It went round and then came back down to Earth. And there was all sorts of problems there. If you listen to the audio, there's all sorts of strange buzzes and clicks on it because they had, and they obviously all of these were just part of the test to get it right. So I think one of the original Apollo's missions actually destroyed a television camera because they pointed it directly at the sun, and it just blew the whole, everything was shot on it. So that. Like you say, if you want to disprove something, you'll find little things all over the place.
Do you see recently there was one of the astronauts' widows put up for auction, I think, a bag of tools that the astronaut had kept. It was a bag of
Oh,
tools.
Neil Armstrong's widow.
Was it Neil Armstrong's widow?
Yeah, yeah.
They were supposed to be left on the surface of the moon, but he decided to just take them with him and take them home and have them in a cupboard for like 40 years, which I think is brilliant.
Right. Well, I mean, there's nothing really more to say on that one. You either believe it or you don't, and I think if you desperately want to just not believe it, you won't believe it unless you actually get to be plonked on the surface of the moon.
I suspect that these things, the number of people that believe in them, doesn't change based on the evidence. You know, that basically if you don't believe it on the first set of evidence, more volume of evidence isn't going to change your mind, basically, because like I say, you've already. I think it probably changes more to do with people's feelings about the government, people's feelings about the state, people's attitude towards science and whatever. I think it's probably more a factor of that, and and also I guess the circles people move in. It's more a factor than that than the weight of evidence. I think if 10 photographs don't convince you that you're wrong, then 100 or 1,000 is not going to make a difference, is it? If you're just going to go la 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 la, then
Apparently, 22 million Americans believe the moon landing was fake. There, that's a stat.
Still now.
Yeah. Well, that was in 2012.
Yeah, 25 million of them believe the country's run by lizards in human skins. So that's not too bad.
That's only 12 million think that.
Oh, is it? Oh, okay.
50%.
So only twice as
of the
many
population think that their country is actually where Russia is.
But only well, that's kind of just a knowledge thing. But at least with this, so if the moon landed, only twice as many people think that the moon lands are fake than think the country's run by lizard humans.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's reassuring, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
Anyway, that's enough of that. Richard, get us back to sanity. Or perhaps not, because your topic is an underwater mystery creature.
Yeah, mine's about this creature's been known about for a while, but it's been a full-length video release, which I'm not going to try and show because whenever you put stuff on YouTube of other people's copyrighted videos, it gets taken.
Isn't this the Abyss?
No, this is from a real dive off the coast of Tasmania. I'm just wondered what you thought of this.
It's definitely the Abyss.
You genuinely want a comment on that?
Well, I genuinely want to know what you think it is.
Well, it's going to be some sort of not squid, what they're called, jellyfish. I assume.
Well, it's from my point of view, it's either a pipe or it's just photoshopped.
No, it's a real living creature.
We're talking about the blue thing, not the bloke with the air thing.
Yeah, not the bloke. Here's it. So this is it from another angle.
Oh,
that's the whole. That's the whole creature. Wow.
Right. Okay.
What about this one?
Is he riding it?
Well, he's making it out as if he's riding it. Of course, it's not actually supporting his weight, but
That's brilliant.
So
is this some sort of freakish thing caused by pollution in the ocean, or
no,
this just a normal natural creature?
Nothing like that. It's a natural creature. I'll put you out of your misery. Basically, I'll share again. But this is it close up.
Oh, so is it lots of individual creatures?
Yeah. So it's actually a colony of creatures.
Taking on the form of that huge thing.
Basically, so that huge thing. So the huge thing collectively is called a pyrosome, and the individual creatures are tourniquets. So there's over 2,000 species of these tourniquets, but they're basically very small marine filter feeders who clump together, and you can see they're the individual organisms. So they basically reproduce asexually, so they use a process called budding and cell division at a particular point in the organism, and they split off. So basically, they're all clones of the same organism, and they can reach these great long lengths to the point where a person could swim inside, believe it or not. And the reason that they have that appearance when it's large is they're bioluminescent. So they produce bioluminescence. So that's what that blue color is. You get them all different colors, pinks and. But yeah, they're fascinating.
So what's the reason that they sort of clump together like this? Is it beneficial to them, or?
Yeah, it's just evolutionary success. That's the way that they live. That, you know, if you reproduce asexually, then you know, you want to replicate as much as you can. But yeah, that, you know, if one dies off, then it's got an identical clone to carry on, hasn't it? So
it looks like, is it a big tube effectively?
Yeah, a big tube. Yeah. And basically, they filter food from the outside, and the waste goes into the middle part.
And have they seen lots of instances of this? It's not just
this footage, which I'm not going to show, but we'll link to. It's the first time it's been filmed, but there is, obviously, you see them. Those stills are all from the video, but there is stills of different ones.
And they all look the same. They all link together in that tube-like.
Yeah, basically. There's a nice pink one of a turtle eating one.
It's like when you see the footage, you get quite often footage from unmanned submersibles that do, like, you know, check the oil pipes and stuff like that. And there'll be someone controlling it, and then suddenly it'll turn around and there'll be some massive thing swims past. And it's always like, you know, reported as being, you know, a beast or something. But it's interesting that's not a beast. It's just a coming together of lots of individual organisms. Yeah. Which means, I mean, is there any limit to the size they could get then?
Not really. I mean, no. I mean, each individual is only a few millimeters long, and the most commonly encountered species, they're about 8 millimeters, so just less than a centimeter. But basically, they're joined. So the reason they're called tunicates is that they've got like a tunic of gelatinous matter around them, and so they're actually physically joined by that. So that they've actually got that in common. So all the individuals are like physically joined up by that. But yeah, I mean, they're mostly just free floating. So they're just by the mercy of the tides and the mercy of the currents, basically. But they have when they're small, they can actually propel themselves. But as they get to that sort of size, they just float around on the current, basically.
And do they float around at a particular height, a depth rather?
Yeah, I think 800 feet is kind of where they're most commonly found. But they're thought that maybe they can go down to the depths, but it's normally sort of the surface waters that they're at. But sailors see them, and often apparently it's a bit of a visual treat, because what happens is the colour can move down. So you can have like a band of colour, because the other sensor bioluminescence, and then they light up themselves. So you'll get like colours travelling down them, you know, a bit like you've seen jellyfish sort of do. But also if it's a particular part of the ocean, sailors have seen it where it's been full of different colonies, and they copy each other. So the luminescence runs down one like a Mexican wave, and then runs all along. So you can have the whole sea sort of lit up.
That would really freak you out.
That's dead impressive. That whole thing is impressive. I've never seen anything like that before. I mean, I know we've covered some of the things that you can find down in some of the deep trenches, but that's pretty amazing.
So where was that filmed then? Which part of the world?
Tasmania. Yeah, so there's footage by Eaglehawk Dive, which was also used in the BBC documentary about 3 months back, which we'll link to in the comments. But yeah, you can see them diving. They just unexpectedly saw it. But I think even they were saying they were like a team of expert divers who go out all the time and in those waters. And the guy says on the documentary, guys, come and have a look, because this is a once in a lifetime thing. So I don't think they're that commonly found. And most of the stuff that you see is of them very small, so I think that one's reached an unusually large size. But in terms of upper limit, I think it's just if they're predated, then they'll lose size. But probably a bit like these large fish balls that you see. There's nothing really stopping them getting super massive, except for when something comes along and fancies a meal.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, that's the proper way to end the show. We come back to actual things that are happening on the planet Earth and in the seas and are real.
But it's interesting that you initially thought that it was fake, because they're so like alien-like, aren't they? That they do almost look. I mean, that's a different species there. That doesn't form these. That forms like more like what you would think of as a coral sort of thing. But they're quite beautiful. I mean, this one doesn't form a pyrosome, but these are just the individual organisms. So that's kind of very simple. And they've been around since first multi-celled life, so they're like a really, they're one of those where it's like a really old design, if you like.
And pretty successful by the sounds of it.
Yeah. But yeah, they're quite spectacular, aren't they? I thought.
I think
that's the best one.
I think I genuinely thought it was fake when you showed me the first image. When you showed me when you put it in context and zoomed out.
Yeah,
it was not easier to see that it wasn't.
When I saw it reported, they used that one, and I think that it's on purpose because it kind of looks kind of like quite unbelievable, doesn't it? From that angle, it looks even more like weird.
Go back to that other one of them riding it. Dr. Strangelove.
Yeah. But yeah.
I think you get from that one, apart from the fact that it looks strange, but you get the actual the effect that it's definitely substantial. It's not just if you go on top of it, they all disintegrate.
I'm guessing, but I think he's just positioned himself and he's just floating just above it. I don't think it would bear any weight at all, to be honest. I think if he applied any downward pressure, it would go down. But I mean, it's a solid membrane, so it is like it wouldn't just go into individual pieces if you were to touch it. It is solid. But
all linked together very, pretty substantially.
And it's also quite interesting just to think that that's all one organism as well. These are all. It's a clone of one organism. One 8mm organism's made itself into that huge long thing.
Wow. Well, that's it. I mean, that's how you end the show. I don't think anything else can top that this week. Right. Okay. Well, we're past time, but I think it was worth it this week. I think we had a few things that we had to settle, and I think we've settled them. And let there be no more with the Apollo moon landings. That's enough for us now. We'll get on to something else.
What about the footage of Apollo 18? We haven't mentioned that.
We all know that Apollo 18 didn't happen.
Well, it's a difficult one, isn't it? Because you want to promote healthy skepticism, and I think the problem is that if you're not part of the skeptic community, or if you're not particularly scientifically literate, you probably feel as though you're just being skeptical. You get this a little bit with the whole global warming denialism and stuff like that. People feel as though they're just being healthily skeptical, but actually they're not really, because what they're doing without realizing it is selectively choosing evidence, aren't they?
Well, actually, if you want to be accurate, Ross, the Apollo 18 mission did actually become the first Skylab mission. So there. Yep. So it did happen, but it wasn't called Apollo 18. But they used the same rockets and the same infrastructure.
I'm actually surprised, though, that the numbers are... we need to really get numbers from a less crazy country than the US to see what people are.
That was the first one that came up when I Googled this.
I've got a feeling with the UK that the numbers will have been relatively high around the time, but that will have dropped off substantially since.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know anyone who thinks the moon landings are fake. Do you guys know anyone who thinks that?
Oh, yeah. Loads of people. Yeah, loads of people. Yep.
I mean, I've heard people say about the Twin Towers being faked and things like that, but and I've definitely heard people about global warming say it's fake, but
perhaps all the people who think that the moon landing is fake and who will keep stum because they know how you're going to react.
It's all the same people, though, isn't it? Basically, it's the people who are conspiracy theorists tend to be about a broad range of different things, don't they? They tend to be. If you ask those same people, do you think such and such is out to get us? Do you think the government's operating in our interest? And they answer commonly to those questions as well, wouldn't they? I assume they think there's like a big brother out there, don't they?
It's the man. Right. Okay. Well, that is seriously all that we've got time for this week. Thank you, guys. That was another good one, and thank you everybody for watching, listening, and whatever. As always, please, as Rob did, send us an email. Well, you can tweet us. We've all had our banners on this week for once. We've all remembered with our Twitter handles on. You can also email us at wonderstuff@gmail.com or go to our blog, wonderstuff.blogspot.com. It's coming on quite well. We are adding more content as we go through, as well as all of the show notes for all of the the shows that we've done and the ones that we're coming up with. So until this time next week, let us all say goodbye.
Goodbye.
See ya.